A medieval guild was not a cozy club of craftsmen. In many towns, it decided who could work, who could sell, and who had to stay outside the gate. The word sounds harmless because it grew from the idea of paying into a shared group, but payment quickly became power when a trade controlled access to a city market. By the 12th and 13th centuries, European towns were filling with bakers, weavers, tanners, fishmongers, goldsmiths, masons, and merchants who needed rules. Rules could protect buyers from bad bread, weak cloth, false weights, and careless work. A guild mark told a customer that someone could be blamed. That is the generous side of the story: training, standards, mutual aid, funerals, worship, and help for sick members or widows. The harder side is just as important. A guild could also close a trade, limit competition, raise entry costs, and defend privilege as if privilege were tradition. Merchant guilds often came first in town politics. They protected traders on roads, docks, bridges, and foreign markets where a single merchant was vulnerable. Craft guilds organized skilled work. A cloth guild, a shoemaker's guild, or a goldsmith's guild made a trade into a guarded institution. The first evidence is often dry: charters, ordinances, fees, lists of names, fines, and privileges confirmed by kings, bishops, mayors, or councils. One charter could turn ordinary work into a monopoly. If the city recognized the guild, outsiders might be fined for doing the same job without permission. This is why guild history is not just craft history, it is also the history of law, city government, taxation, social rank, and bargaining with power. In York, records show weavers paying the king in the 12th century, and later a city crowded with glovers, saddlers, hosiers, butchers, drapers, and vintners. York also gives us the small machinery of control. Ordinances could name how many porters worked, where they carried goods, and what fee they charged. The apprentice entered at the bottom. He, and sometimes she, lived under a master, learned the craft, and traded years of labor for training and food. The famous 7-year apprenticeship was common in England, but not universal. Different cities and trades set different terms, fees, ages, and expectations. After training came the journeyman, skilled enough to earn wages, usually not wealthy enough to own a workshop, tools, stock, and legal standing. To become a master, a worker might need money, approval, citizenship, family connections, a finished test piece, and the patience to survive every fee. The word masterpiece once had teeth. It could mean a proof of skill placed before people who could open a future or shut it down. Women were never simply absent from this world. They worked in family shops, textiles, brewing, food trades, and sometimes held guild rights, especially as widows. But access was uneven. Many guilds restricted women, outsiders, migrants, religious minorities, and poorer workers whose labor was needed but whose membership was blocked. Religious guilds complicate the picture. Some were built less around a trade than around prayer, charity, funerals, feast days, candles, and a patron saint. Craft guilds often carried that religious life too. A trade could march in procession, fund an altar, honor a saint, and still police prices on Monday morning. The city stage made guilds visible. Halls, banners, liveries, seals, and coats of arms turned economic authority into public theater. A guild hall was not merely a meeting room. It could be a courtroom, banquet space, archive, treasury, hiring center, and political engine. Quality control could be strict because reputation was money. Searchers inspected raw materials, tools, finished goods, and sometimes the honesty of the seller. Yet the same inspection that protected customers could protect insiders. Standards can be public service, but they can also become a wall against new rivals. Guilds also shaped time. Ordinances could close workshops on Sundays and feast days, not because leisure was modern, but because religion structured labor. Their rules reached into behavior. Drinking, gambling, theft, disorder, bad workmanship, or an evil reputation could bring fines, shame, or expulsion. The popular version imagines guilds as medieval unions. That is only partly true, because masters usually governed them, and journeymen did not always share power. Some workers formed their own associations or protested conditions, especially when wages, mobility, and access to master status narrowed. Cities liked guilds because guilds made people legible. A government could tax, summon, inspect, punish, and negotiate with a trade through its officers. Guilds liked cities because recognition gave them teeth. A rule written on parchment mattered more when the mayor, court, or crown stood behind it. The system was never identical across Europe. Paris, York, Florence, Valencia, Padua, London, and German towns all developed local versions. Florence shows the high political stakes. Major guilds could shape civic power, while the wool economy linked workshops, finance, labor, and international trade. Paris gives another kind of evidence. In 1268, the Livre de Métiers gathered rules for many trades, showing how carefully urban work could be classified. Valencia shows that guild paperwork could be beautiful and strict at once. Embroiderers and cord makers used detailed ordinances to define membership and trade behavior. London's livery companies reveal how work became ceremony. Clothing, processions, halls, and civic offices turned trade associations into a visible ruling culture. Guild names also survived in city geography. Bread Street, Friday Street, and workshop quarters remind us that trades once shaped how a town was walked. York's Corpus Christi Guild shows scale. A religious guild could gather thousands of members across status lines, binding devotion to civic identity. A cloth trade was never one workshop. Shepherds, dyers, fullers, shearers, weavers, merchants, and inspectors all touched the same chain of value. Apprenticeship was also a legal relationship. A household, a craft, a parent, a master, and a city could all have claims on one young worker's future. The sharpest question is who benefited most. Customers might gain trust, masters might gain profit, cities might gain order, and outsiders might lose a livelihood. Goldsmiths show another face of guild life. Expensive materials demanded trust, testing, marks, and close regulation, because fraud could ruin a city reputation. The decline of guilds was uneven. Some weakened as markets, states, and industry changed. Others survived as ceremonial, charitable, or professional bodies. What the legend leaves out is the tension. Guilds preserved skill and community, but they also guarded privilege, controlled opportunity, and made inequality respectable. Guilds were not only economic clubs, they shaped trust in a world where buyers could not easily verify training, materials, weights, or workmanship. Rules could protect quality, but they could also protect insiders from competition. That is why guilds still matter. They ask a very modern question in medieval clothing: when does protecting standards become protecting insiders? Their records reveal everyday power, apprenticeships, entrance fees, feast days, fines, widows' rights, workshop hours, and disputes over who was allowed to sell. The drama is hidden in paperwork because paperwork controlled livelihoods. The next time you see a guild sign, imagine the whole machine behind it: the apprentice, the master, the widow, the outsider, the buyer, and the city seal. Which part should Lore Atlas uncover next? That is why the guild story needs balance. They preserved skill and community, but they also drew boundaries. For some workers those boundaries meant identity and protection. For others they meant exclusion, delay, or dependence. Their legacy is therefore double-edged: a world of trained hands, shared identity, strict rules, and doors that did not open equally for everyone.